bandwidth provided by Recursive Squirrel Interactive. Visit them on the web at recursivesquirrel.com. Episode 581. Follow the Money. For Monday, February 24th, 2020, it's time for this week's edition of the BeanCast, a weekly discussion about the news and issues facing marketers today. I'm your host, Bob Norp. Thanks for joining us. Brandless, one of the most celebrated of the DTC startups, flamed out spectacularly this past week. And while one company's experience doesn't necessarily represent an entire category, it does inspire some concern. Is it the beginning of the end? Tonight we'll discuss. Also, Facebook's Libra gets a breath of life, saving the local TV ad market, the Trump campaign's Election Day ad coup, plus this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. That's the lineup. Let's meet tonight's panel. Thanks for joining us for this week's BeanCast. I'm Bob Norp, and with me on the panel for this evening, we start with the co-host of Across the Pond, digital transformation consultant, Mr. Sam Monnie. Sam, what's going on?
Hey, Bob, how are you, sir? I am super excited to be back on the show, and I am ready and waiting for all the questions possible that we could cover about the topic of marketing.
I'm glad that I write a script for this show because it's just like I need lots of questions for you, and I'm glad I have them all.
Mystery. No prep at all. This is all freestyle.
And with him, we're thrilled to have back on the show marketing consultant, podcaster, and partner at Profit, where he leads the marketing and sales practice, Mr. Mat Zucker. Matt, hi.
Hey, Bob. Hi, Sam. Thanks for letting me back on. And please direct all the tough questions at Sam. I can take the easy ones.
I don't know who that is.
There's going to be a lot of heavy lifting for you both tonight because we got some meaty topics. And the first one is one of the meatiest. The first billion-dollar failure within the hot direct-to-consumer space has thrown the entire sector into a spiral of, shall we call it self-reflection? Oh, man. It's just like, Matt, Brandless going under is a pretty big deal. I mean, we all got to admit that. It's some people are saying something like $1 billion valuation just lost, but how concerned should others in the DTC space really be? Is this indicative of a larger problem, or is it just something that's unique to what happened to Brandless?
So this is actually a good, tough question, but I am up to it because I love DTC. I mean, I buy my razors from Harry for years, and I think I have 60 Untuckit shirts, so I am an expert.
Wow.
But I'm an addict. But to answer your question, I think DTC is not a bubble ready to burst. It is big, getting bigger, and for a lot of good reasons. It'll be a force for years to come. I mean, it's changing B2C and it's changing B2B. But what I did do is I called my colleague Eunice Shin, who's a DTC expert, to get a better idea of what the real problem was here and what is happening. And what she emphasized is that many of these businesses, I mean, including Brandless, are backed by VCs. And what they want is their scale, and they want their money back fast. So companies like Brandless, who had a lot of the right pieces and respected leadership, and they should have been a hit, at least from a Silicon Valley point of view, maybe not a Madison Avenue point of view. They were focused on growth and scale, and they had what they didn't have. They had really shallow customer relationships. These companies focus on initial acquisition, right? But especially in the subscription-driven models, you need to learn how to build a relationship. You need to innovate on your experience, which they didn't, and then you need to kill it on operations and culture.
But isn't that against the whole model of DTC? I mean, DTC is really a tactic that's been applied to a whole category of businesses, and DTC has always been about acquisition. It's never been about customer retention and.
Sure. Why can't it be? It's just a posture of being really customer centric. And if you're customer centric, you want to keep that relationship going, and that's why the subscriptions work.
You're absolutely right. Subscription businesses make sense as far as if they're done right. If you're building a good relationship, but when you build your whole business around this DTC model. and you don't have other revenue streams, other ways of approaching your customers, other ways of encouraging brand engagement, and other ways of finding new customers, getting new customers into the funnel, you're putting all your eggs in one tactics basket. And it seems to me that that's the core of the problem here. It's, we're not really diversifying enough with these businesses. And most of them, as they mature, do diversify, and they're the ones who are surviving. But the ones who stick strictly on the DTC model are the problem children. Am I wrong about that?
Well, I think you've made a good point there, Bob. If I jump in, there's a lot of CPGers celebrating with champagne and canapes right now, proving that their legacy brand is outsmarted and outscaled and outvolumed Brandless, because a lot of those players are vested in the traditional distribution channels. So, to your point, DTC through an online vehicle is actually limiting if you want to get the full market potential. And just to counter Matt's point, I bought 4 Untuck It shirts, and I actually bought them in store, not through the online portal. So just the point there, I'm still a bit old-fashioned and traditional. But as I think bigger about this story, Bob, I'm thinking, Casper's devaluation, their IPO didn't go so well. Edgewell's called off its acquisition of Harry's, I'm thinking, and Harry's and Birchbox have laid off some people recently. So there is some question marks behind that model of DTC. And I think for me, it seems that there were some fundamental flaws in the Brandless play of sticking to their $3 pricing point. And if that wasn't sustainable, you've got to pivot. So I think that was core to some of the things holding them back. And, they had their $3 price point, but not everything in Dollar General or Dollar Tree or even Dollar Shave Club is $1. So I get it. You want to price it competitively, but still, it's just felt that could have been a constraining factor. They had some leadership departures. So maybe some of the culture and ethos of the organization was lost. So yes, turning to growth and delivering, I guess, a profit was a focus, but there were some other things going on their business model, I think, that constrained them.
Look at Glossier is such a great model for what does work. I mean, they're a loved brand, and they try things all the time, and they pivot when play wasn't a big hit, right? They were able to readjust, and they've got lines out the door, and they do relationships. They use content, they bridge digital and physical. So I think there are success stories in the category. Even Smile Direct, right, who's having major product problems, is still having competitors try to copy them.
Yeah, I'll agree with this. I mean, it's just like I like where this conversation is flowing, because I think that Brandless had some particular problems, but it doesn't negate that there are some widespread problems that are affecting all of the DTC. Well, no, maybe not all the DTC brands, but at least the entire DTC space. I think that's fair to say, right? I mean, it's
yes, yeah, I would agree with that, Bob. And if you look at the numbers, if it's costing $22 or whatever the average cost of getting consumer, then you've got to ship and sell a lot of things to keep to make that back. And if the acquisition game is where you're investing all your dollars and you're losing and hemorrhaging customers and consumers, then that relationship, that long-term play isn't happening. And so ultimately you're going to burn through cash and you're not going to deliver a sustainable business model. And so I think I saw somewhere, again, in the Birchbox article a year or so ago, they raised their minimum monthly fee from $10 to $15, which is a hefty price rise. So I think the fundamentals of running a scale business is a challenge as these organizations are trying to grow. And acquisition is great, but it's not the only play. And I think from us now looking back at business models and looking at what you'll teach at business school or what you'll learn as marketers and advertisers, as I said earlier, I think a lot of the legacy brands are probably dancing and celebrating right now, but I wouldn't hold on to that bottle of champagne too tight, because there are the market is shifting and the consumer is constantly looking for value, constantly looking for relationships, constantly looking for better product. And I think actually, certainly in a lot of CPG places, you're seeing I come from a sort of a food background, and you've got the Lidls, the Aldis, the Trader Joe's who aren't a DTC player, but they're delighting consumers, delighting customers, providing experiences, providing great content. I think actually are building relationships with their customers and consumers. So I don't think DTC has any particular right to win. Some will do it better than others, but you still got to be great marketers. You still got to have a great brand proposition. And I think you've got to deliver great products and great experiences for consumers. And that isn't, I don't think, any different to just fundamental modern marketing, right?
Well, right. And if there's something that you said that I want to drill down on, and maybe you can help me out with this, Matt, maybe give a little perspective on this. But for me, the big problem with DTC is the scale problem. I mean, DTC, most of the DTC plays out there are really super interesting. We go direct to the consumer, we get them interested in this product, we hook them on a subscription model, we keep the money flowing in. But at a certain point, you get to this plateau of maybe 5%, 10%, 11% of the audience that's willing to subscribe to have their toiletries sent to them or whatever the product is. And after that, there's no scale to it, because and for me, that's always the problem.
There's two models, right? There's the DTC standalone brands, right, that have to go to VCs to get the money, and they need the growth. They have to do pure acquisition, and they will plateau, especially in a lot of categories when you can only take so much, from Amazon, especially if it's a low margin category. But what about the DTC that's coming from a large company, or when a B2B company goes DTC? They don't have the same problems. They don't have to take a VC attitude. So they can grow and be profitable and not have the same kind of numbers against them. So you may not see the same problems come up. I think you got to follow where the money comes from.
Yeah, and as I was researching this, we know that last year, full disclosure, I worked at P&G. I worked on the Gillette brand, and they wrote down the value of Gillette by $8 billion because the market is getting eroded by tough competitors out there. But their direct-to-consumer proposition seems to be growing and seems to be working. But ultimately, scaling is about the physical retail and the distribution in the very channels and the very stores that often these DTC players are trying to disrupt, unsettle, and perhaps even sneer at. So having been in CPG and retail in multiple cases, there's an inevitability of having to fit into the retailer launch windows, store reset timings, the foibles of buyers, weekly store flyers, in-store demos, end cap displays, etc. You basically have to play the game, and so if you're cutting yourself out of the market, you're ultimately not going to win. But I think the game of the status quo game is probably offensive to a lot of the people leading these companies. And actually, more and more, I'm seeing people being recruited from traditional organizations into these sort of startup and challenger brands to bring some of those general management, perhaps blocking and tackling expertise versus the perhaps the pure play DTC people who haven't got the chops to as I say, do some of the boring basic retail stuff.
And this is exactly you're proving my point. This is what I said from the very beginning. DTC is fine as a tactic, and maybe even as a way to launch a company. But as an ongoing model, DTC alone can't take you to the next level. You can't scale a business going entirely direct to consumer. I mean, you can make a fine business, you can make a lot of money, but you can't scale the business. And Matt, I love how you're talking about follow the money. That's where you can find the problem spots in DTC. People who are taking huge amounts of venture capital are going to have to pay the piper eventually when they can't scale the business.
I think there will be, there could be plateaus within a single product group, but if you start getting the model down of how best to find these customers, how best to win them over, how to keep a relationship with them, how to like sell and merchandise the data, and how to be smart, like good modern direct marketers, right? There's no reason why you couldn't keep growing. I think it's more than a tactic. I think it's kind of the new model for what it's like to be both a marketer and an experienced designer and a commerce business.
Does anybody go ahead?
I kind of find the tactic a bit offensive as well, even though I'm not in that game, because I believe there is a deliverable, and I'm thinking about different categories that I play in where DCC, I tell the story that I'm a Trader Joe's, I'm a Eddie Bauer dressed from head to toe, and I basically order the same things all the time: button-down shirts, undershirts, jumpers, or sweaters as they call them in America. And they could so build a DTC opportunity with me, but they haven't yet. They've got my data. They know what I've been doing for like the last 8 years. So they have permission to send me stuff, and I'll probably send the money back. So I think there are opportunities. Again, Eddie Bauer does have some physical stores, but my predominant relationship is actually online with them. So to sort of add to the points we've been talking about, I think there's still huge potential in this space. And you may just say, isn't that just online retail? Yeah, but I think there's still some of the best practices of the DTC players that other folks could borrow and leverage and steal. So I think it actually is strategic in a lot of ways.
Does anybody have any thoughts on what Brandless could have done better here? I mean, it's just like we've talked about a lot of their problems, but I don't know that we've talked about what they could have done better and what they could
Yeah,
have
it's
gotten.
interesting because I was asking Eunice about this too. Is I looked at the product reviews and they had a lot of complaints about the product,
Mm.
which is pretty damning at a low margin. Because that was their thing, right? Is like good quality products that you don't have to think about. But then the other gap was really on the experience. There were delivery problems, and I think a lot of the DTC brands have that. They have to that last mile. They can't. They're not really good at, and they're so busy focused right on acquisition that they're not good on innovating the experience the way some of the pharmacies are doing a good job and other people are figuring it out. I think that was a gap, and the name was a little silly, but that's okay.
Well, and then also I'll add in there, the product piece is huge because, as again, if you're making food products and you're just selling them $3 and saying, "Hey, this is our proposition," I'm telling you now, the Aldis and the Lidls are delivering best-in-class product, often at a lower price point than branded goods, like the Costco model. So, especially in food, the Germans didn't come to play. They came to win. And having lived there for a few years, I know that as a brand marketer, you had to be top of your game to compete with just the product proposition in a lot of those places. So people aren't choosing the Lidl wine or Aldi wine because it's cheap. They're choosing because it's great value and delivers a great experience. Again, very similar to what Costco's proven in the marketplace with their private label. So I guess one of the flaws in Brandless was it was a private label, which wasn't really a great one in comparison to what other
Well,
choices consumers had.
it
And so
wasn't a true
that could have
private.
been.
It wasn't a true private label, and that was another complaint that I read in the articles that were talking about this kind of demise of the company. I mean, here we have this company that's brandless, and they turned brandless into a brand, and it was a branded product. It's not like they were white labeling product per se. They were just branding their own products called brandless, and I'm wondering if that's a legitimate criticism that, because they were becoming a brand, they were being untrue to their premise. Is that something that resonates with you guys, or is that something that's just
I don't know if people think about it that much. I think I got some good headlines when it started, and it was a cool looking brand the way Method was,
Mm.
when Method first came out. But I think after time, it just became kind of a cool brand, and kind of. I mean, people then Amazon came out with their own, label brand as well too. So I don't think they're as unique, as they could have been or they were a long time ago.
And one thing I would want to say is actually researching this piece. There's a lot of stuff out there, but one kudos to the organization and I guess the decision makers there is that actually I think part of the closure was so that they had the funds to actually pay severance to their staff. So the suddenness was actually, hey, let's treat our people well, or do the right thing. And so I'm going on the reporting I think from Fast Company on that. So that actually gives me heart. That exactly. So all of there's been a lot of criticism on the show so far, but that for me says okay, some human beings actually did the right thing. So that's a positive injection into this story, Bob.
Well, I think it's safe to say that none of us think that there is this massive bubble in the DTC space about to burst. I think that was the big fear when we heard that Brandless went under. But is there some sort of bubble out there, or do we have to worry about a lot of other companies? Because we've been mentioning other companies out there that could potentially be in trouble or might be looking at trouble going forward. Are we going to see at least a few of these companies go under pretty quickly?
Well, sure. There's so many. I would think it'd be very natural. Maybe it'll be highly visible because we'll all be looking for it. But the ones that are stuck on the acquisition only model and that do plateau will have there'll be a couple of fails, and then there'll also be it's also a personality driven culture. So I mean, I think Away is bouncing back, but they had a lot of bad press. A lot of these companies are very fragile on multiple fronts. So I think we'll see a failure rate, but I think the business is so big, I'm not sure it'll be that indicative if we see a few more go.
But listen, I think that you ask a good question, Bob. And so as I was looking at this story, I'm going to be doing a bit more research because what's not being solved for, what's not in the marketplace now. And I think there's probably a lot of innovators and entrepreneurs out there probably not looking like the usual status quo from San Francisco who have propositions that can reach other consumer groups. I'm just thinking of a brand like Bevel, which was founded by an African-American, black entrepreneur targeting and really talking to that consumer who had different skin and different needs and weren't being met by the marketplace. So if you're going to look somewhere, look what hasn't been done or delivered from the mainstream stakeholders and look at a more diverse entrepreneurial pool, and you'll probably find some gems there actually that are scalable in the marketplace. I was just looking at some stuff in the UK, and there was this Nigerian tapas restaurant, and I just thought, wow, what a great construct, what a great concept. That is it just a new thought, and I haven't seen it in the US. So I think there's room for new entrants that could enter the marketplace and actually perhaps revitalize the whole sector.
Really fascinating conversation. Well, I want to move on. I want to talk next about the Facebook currency or cryptocurrency, Libra. They've had a lot of high-profile exits over the past few months. I guess it's been, you had Visa and MasterCard pull out. Yeah, I think PayPal pulled out. I mean, everybody was pulling out of this. Then came news this past week that Shopify, and that's a big name, has joined up with Facebook's Libra. They're now a signatory. Sam, does the Shopify news breathe new life into the effort, or is Libra still on life support? I mean, is this just some PR buzz for now, or is this a real sign of a turning point for them?
Well, full disclosure, Bob, I'm a Facebook shareholder. Personally, I got stock in them, and you might have seen me promptly featured in a promo for their workplace product, which is basically the work Facebook, which I actually think is a really good product. But anyway, those are stories for another day. The principle of Libra has merit. So I'm trying to separate Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg
let me be clear, just for the audience sake. I think that Libra was an inevitability, and that Facebook needs to have a currency, as part of their operating agenda or whatever. I don't know that I agree with Libra as it exists. I don't know that Facebook should have as much control of it as they have, but I think it's a natural move. So go for it.
Well, yeah, and I think that's part of the issue, because as I started researching and going to the Libra site and realizing there's a huge bunch of nonprofits, and one of them is Kiva, who I'm a huge advocate for. So the basic problem, or that they're trying to solve for, is good. It's the governance that has spooked people, and the possible partners and legislators is if Mark Zuckerberg controls the world's money. That's where they have huge concerns. So I think Shopify coming on board definitely gives it some legitimacy, some credibility, and potentially other of similar partners will then say, oh, we need to be part of it. But I vacillate, I think, Bob, because the bad rap has been established because of the huge concern over the governance piece. But if you think about the ability to provide a cryptocurrency where people, will be able to send, receive, and spend their money, especially to be more inclusive in the global financial system where a lot of people are underbanked or don't have that service, that has such merit. But the challenge is I don't see the Zuckerbergs of this world compromising and wanting to succumb to the level of scrutiny and I think oversight that is being demanded. I think I saw a quote by the French finance minister, the monetary sovereignty of countries is at stake from a possible privatization of money, and we can't authorize that on European soil. So when you've got people saying you're taking over money, I think there is just a huge headwind for this entire project per se. And so that's, I think, where the trouble comes. I don't know how you
there's two things.
Fix something that people are so viscerally rejecting because of the involvement, unless they kind of step away and basically cede control. But that's not really a Facebook move.
There's two things going on here. What you're saying, and I want to talk about the headwinds and all the challenges and the technical problems and all that. But I'm more interested first in what Shopify gets out of this. Why is this important for Shopify? Why does this inspire other brands who are like Shopify to want to get involved with this? What is it about having this relationship with Libra in particular and Facebook? What's that going to give for Shopify? Is it just because Shopify does a lot of business off of Facebook now? Is that what's driving this?
Well, surely you're going to become the infrastructure. You're going to become the next big thing, and you're going to be synonymous with that industry, that sector. So they're currently a provider. They're not the world's currency, technology solve. That's not where they are today. So I think if you're thinking about visionary and leading the company in a new direction, you're going to disproportionately grow your business by being an infrastructure for a global system, which no one else is doing right now. So
And I think it's fair. We also need to clarify one thing. I called it a cryptocurrency. Everybody calls it a cryptocurrency. It's not really a cryptocurrency, right? It's more like a Starbucks card.
You said that, Bob. That's on you.
No, but I mean, from what I understand, I mean, it's still blockchain. It's still some kind of secure way to pay, but it's not necessarily like a currency that can be traded on the open market like Bitcoin. It's not a true cryptocurrency. It's just a transaction tool that allows for anybody who doesn't have a credit card to actually participate in the economy. I mean, it's an equalizer. I can see why somebody like Shopify would be super interested in a product like that, because they're disintermediating the whole idea of starting a business. They're making it so easy to start a business that you just throw up a Shopify page and you're in business. And I think that Libra fits their values really, really well without having to go full on into some kind of cryptocurrency like Bitcoin.
Well, there was another reason as well. There was a senior person from, I think, Facebook who went across to Shopify. So there's just a relationship there as well. So that's a senior research. And so, I mean, look, according to the reporting, Kaz Nejatayan, I think the name is, became Shopify's VP of GM and Money, came from Facebook, lead product manager. So someone who knows what's going on there says, hey, we should do this. And Bob's your uncle. There you go. I've explained it all.
Matt, I know this is not your forte in this area, but I would love for you to weigh in terms of the fact that other sites, other e-commerce sites, other potential partners for the Libra currency, are they going to be swayed by Shopify being involved with this? Do you see any kind of movement that might happen as a result of this, or is that just wishful thinking right now? Because Shopify is going to need to prove that it's working and that it's doing a good job before anybody else jumps on board.
Well, I would argue people will take a second look. When Visa and MasterCard, when they left, it was a big deal and it was pretty damning. So to have a really credible player like Shopify reconsider it, I don't know what kind of deal they got. Other people will look at it. People do want to know what their crypto play is. And to tie in the last conversation, right? If more people are going to be trying DTC models, we all need new ways to make it easier for people to pay for things. And I think we're going to see the topic grow. So I don't see why others wouldn't come in, different players into the field. The Simpsons are doing an episode on cryptocurrency.
Really?
They're trying to educate everyone. I mean, it's going to be mass market by tomorrow. But you've got all sorts of people that are unbanked. You've got the promises of complicated transactions will be smoother. So I think there's a lot of appealing things for Shopify and for a couple more players if they want to compete as a storefront or as a back end to do it. I don't see why not. I think everyone would give Facebook another chance to do something wrong. So why not?
Ouch. Well, actually, as you were talking there, I was just realizing, if you've had the big Visa, the big brands step out, and you're not in that game, what have you got to lose to step into this game? If it plays out, you win as a brand, because now there's a whole bunch of consumers who associate Shopify with a solve. And so there is a risk to the incumbent brands not playing, but equally, I think there's just a risk overall to this whole situation, this whole proposition. And so we'll see how it plays out. But I think for Shopify, the only way is up if it actually comes to fruition, because their brand's going to be everywhere across the world, especially in cultures and markets which perhaps do know the Visas and the MasterCards of this world in advance of them.
Do either of you have any suggestions or ideas about what Facebook needs to do to right the ship, get people excited about the platform, and do it so that every government in the world is not breathing down their necks? I mean, what do they need to do better here?
Geez, I need to get paid for that advice, Bob. I'm going to take that offline. But listen, I as I was researching, for me, it's a simple solution. I'm just going to throw it out there. I think they need to let go of this completely and just be another signatory. Like, have it, and not just have a governing body, but just give up the code to whoever, into the consortium, and let them deal with it, and take away their controlling interest from it. I think that's the only way that they're going to avoid all the legal ramifications of putting out their own currency. Yeah, that probably sets a precedent. So there's one guy who could make that call, and we all know who that is, Mark
Yeah.
Zuckerberg. So reading the sort of the notes from the session that he had with the politicians and the governance folks, there wasn't any sort of humility, and they just came out saying he didn't answer our questions and he didn't give us good answers. So there's going to have to be a 180 from I think the person who runs the company to do that. And maybe that could happen, Bob. So I'll tweet him as well as you, or I'll post it on Facebook and see what he says. Is he on Facebook anymore, or did he come off that? I can't recall.
I'm pretty sure he's still on Facebook.
Okay.
Any last thoughts, Matt?
No, I think I want to watch the Simpsons episode so I can understand cryptocurrency.
And let me guarantee you, no matter how well they explain it, it's going to be like Trading Places was for me. I still don't understand the stock market, even though everybody tells me that's the best explanation of the stock market ever put on film. I still don't get it.
Right.
Well, it's a $20 billion ad market, and it's currently in a life support situation. Some people might even say it's dying. Local TV is a valuable commodity that's wrestling with modernization issues that make it difficult for ad buyers to work with it. And it's facing a lot of iffy prospects regarding which technology and platforms to offer as the surest bet for their own health and well-being going forward. Sam, give us a little perspective on the challenges and what local TV needs to do in order to survive. What are your thoughts on this?
Thanks, Bob. I don't want to be snobbish and merely to critique the quality of the ads and the lack of creativity. Please, no more lawyers and sad people that have been in accidents and bad auto cue from car dealership owners. I can't take it anymore, Bob. But I actually don't think that was your question.
It wasn't.
Thinking more seriously, I can't say that I was a regular. So one of the resources you shared was Ad Exchange. I wasn't a regular reader till this week's show. But I was I was just shocked and perhaps naively that the current infrastructure is so antiquated. It got me channeling the entrepreneurial mindset and asking what's missing, because there's so much opportunity to fix the basics. There was a couple of things that stood out to me that it's a seismic shift going on from how they currently do things to the way they should do things, and it's about the automating a lot of it, automating the complexity. So apparently, was it 210 markets, and each market would have to be set up manually, and you'd have to go one by one by one. So they're
not only go one by one by one by one, but go to every station within those markets and have to upgrade and update all that equipment. I mean, that's a lot of equipment and knowledge and manpower, and it's just not easy.
Yeah, well, the current process, but you're selling individually. So just imagine trying to scale your national brand locally. There's just a lot of heavy lifting, and they're looking at ways to package, I think, the linear and digital and online all up in one. And one of the other things I'm seeing is they're moving just in terms of actually moving from GRPs to CPMs. So I didn't realize that was possible, but it turns out that everyone else has gone programmatic, but local TV is only now going impression based in terms of cost measurement. So these changes allow them to even target audiences that weren't large enough to show up in the ratings. So just basics of what we take for granted in advertising weren't easy or don't exist in that marketplace. And so I think
let me ask you this before you go on. Are they right though to kind of stonewall on this issue? Because I mean, look how well programmatic's worked for everybody else. You know what I mean?
I guess that going last has its advantages. However, literally, it's like dial-up when everyone else is using Wi-Fi. And so it's just fascinating how you've got this infrastructure that was designed, I guess, back for the 60s and 70s, and you're doing it manually.
I've got a better analogy. This is like you're on dial-up when everybody else is using ISDN and cable is just hovering on the background. You know what I mean? It's just like, I think that, they're wise to wait and say, I don't want to move to ISDN. Cable's coming. In some ways, a lot of this foot dragging is not just foot dragging. It's very calculated moves to try to wait and see which of the platforms rises to the top and which bet is the best, or else you're going to invest a lot of money and effort into something that's not going to work for you in 10 years.
Well, and absolutely. So, but I think the challenge is it's so far behind now. What are you going to do? So some of the automation needs to happen, and you still need to protect your margins. And as I say, the thought of negotiating every line item in a media plan across up to 210 markets and doing that each time, that's right for innovation. So I think if there seems to be some competition in the marketplace in the tech sector to actually solve and bundle and streamline these problems and actually provide better solutions for markets, because ultimately local TV is fighting national and other digital and other plays for the money. So in this year, the interesting thing is everyone might win and it all might be masked because of this thing called the election and how much money is being pumped into local TV and very targeted and very local play. So actually, there is a perhaps a softening of even wanting to invest because the money's flowing to local TV in this political realm that we're in. And as you read some of that and how much the Bloombergs of this world are spending, especially I think I live in Pennsylvania, really targeted, spending millions locally. A lot of those organizations are going to actually hit their targets this year. So they're all going to get their bonuses, sticking with the status quo as is. But it just seems that the infrastructure, the measurement piece, even the buying piece, it can't carry on the way it is. And so I anticipate if they don't innovate themselves, there's going to be entrance into the market and force that efficiency and force that
you would think
improvement.
there would be good opportunities too. I mean, I'm an ex-creative person, not a media planner, so I never really, I don't care if it's easy to use or not. I'm not as close to the mechanics of actually buying and planning the media. But what I do know is, I want to know where my audience is, and they've got to bring in people, and what, why as local journalism in newspaper kind of nosedived, local events and live events, not just reruns. Isn't that a big area one could be playing with the format? I mean, radio's still around, and radio's trying to innovate with podcasting. I don't know why local TV can't take some cues from what has changed around them and bring some creativity to what they're doing. And they've got a captive physical geographic environment to use and to experiment with.
I'm still, I've worked, I don't know if any of you have worked in local TV or local radio, but I remember those days being in the local radio business, if you will, and radio sales. Oh, boy, and now I'm admitting way too much about myself. But, there is a sense that if you give up control of selling your ads via the salesperson directly talking to the local business owner, that you give up a part of who you are as a company and you give up a huge amount of revenue in the results. And I'm still going back to programmatic is not a panacea. And I think that the troubles that publishers are having, publishers that are failing, I might add, who are adopting all these programmatic ad selling tools, are kind of a warning to these local stations. And until we get some proof that these programmatic solutions are going to work and that they're not going to end up putting inappropriate ads and all the other problems that programmatic has brought about over the past few years. I mean, it's just like, I understand the reason that they're taking it slow. And quite frankly, as much as the media buyers and planners might want to complain about it, they're still going to buy it because the clients still need local scatter. They still need that ad showing up in the local market. And it's going to be a pain in the butt in the meantime, but they're still going to do it. They're not going to just shut them out like the one planner was talking about in the ad. Am I right, Sam? I mean, it's just like, is the need greater than, is the need for the ad greater than the need for the upgrade?
At the end of the day, as I use the analogy, the facts of the political situation, they will do whatever it takes to get that on air under whatever terms or whatever process. So with the money coming in with that, nothing has changed, I guess, and it's under the old system. So I'm with you in terms of there isn't a good reason to change and to give up power or to make things easier, especially when the numbers are better than they were last year. The question comes in 2021, 2022, if the pressure continues to grow. Because if you're not able to reach audiences because they don't actually have any ratings and you're working on GRPs which don't reflect the nature of people you could serve, then ultimately that's got to impact your business and it's got to impact the bottom line. So I think once the numbers start going down and the valuation of these organizations starts to decline, then and the growth in investment in digital continues to take money away from from their channels, then I think they will change. But they're not feeling it in their pocket now. So to your point, I can't see them changing in the short term. But I think post-election, come 2021, let's see, because there's probably going to be a dip. And what happens then?
That's a really good point. I think everybody's going to have to figure out what to do with the dip. Dare I say, the best thing that could happen to TV is a continuation of the current situation in the White House, because they're making money hand over fist with this. But that's another point, which brings us to the next topic. Surprisingly, I can't believe I put a segue in that good.
Look at that, Bob. As if you've done this before, Bob.
I can't believe I did this. With an ad buy that can only be described as a shrewd and even, dare I say, brilliant move, the Trump campaign has bought out the entire front page ad inventory for YouTube on Election Day 2020. Matt, how important is this move, and what could be the impact? I mean, this is pretty big. They are the only ones who are going to be seen on YouTube all day on November 2nd.
Right. It's really brilliant and really entrepreneurial, and video is everything. So this is super important. I think there are other places that people can do a buyout stunt like that. I think there are more types of platforms where one could do something commensurate, but this is really powerful. I don't know if it should be that day of election day, or the day before, but that's what they chose. But I love these type of event-like buys that are really date-oriented. Did you see the Seventh Generation spot after the State of the Union about climate change?
Yes,
a former
I did.
colleague of mine actually worked on that, and it was really great placement and really brilliant in between the State of the Union and the Democratic response. It was well done, and it felt very natural and elegant. So I think everyone's going to be racing to do their big thing to drive out the vote. But I think that was a very wise move. I don't know why people are so cautious about video when they should be going triple down for it.
One thing that struck me about this when I heard the news, if this was television, they would have to give equal time to the other candidate. It's just like, this shows a huge gaping hole in election law, in electioneering law, or whatever they call it. The fact that the Trump campaign could buy all the inventory on YouTube and completely lock out everybody else after them. I mean, shouldn't this be equal time as well? I mean, am I wrong about that?
Well, they're not. So the reporting isn't saying, yay, YouTube are so happy about this. They're kind of sort of saying, oh, yes, you have a masthead placement just like Obama did and Hillary did, and well done for getting that piece. But of course, there's lots of other ad units around. So I think if they're not selling it as it's a Trump exclusive, because I think they are trying to hedge their bets. But for me, Bob, this proves that marketing works, that homepage takeover on steroids is a thing. I remember back at, when the web was invented, this used to happen, and I think Yahoo seems to have a huge market share, but they're not positioning it as an exclusive. And I think the costs are saying it's going to be 1 million a day, according to some estimates, but they're not. It's not unique to the Trump organization, and it's not unique to this campaign. And so I don't envision that other competitors in the market, I guess other politicians running the other person, are going to be passive. They're probably going to be doing something else. So it's probably an opportunity.
It's just a homepage too.
Yeah, there's probably an opportunity to be elsewhere on other platforms. But looking at it, the numbers I saw was 1.3 billion going to be spent on the 2020 cycle. So there's going to be ads galore everywhere else, and I think we're going to be bombarded anyway. But this election is going to be double last election, 19% of all political advertising. So there's a lot of money being spent. Trump has the cash; he's buying the space. But I anticipate other ad units, other brands are going to come out there with things that they're going to be selling just to, I guess, offset this kind of fairness piece that you're talking about, Bob. But I don't know if it's a loophole, because this has always been the way in digital. So we should be doing something about it sooner than now if we have an issue with it. But it's just like brands locking out other brands by taking over homepages. So I don't know.
Yeah, but in electioneering, you're not allowed to take out an ad or have exposure on a network any more than without giving equal access and equal time to the opposing candidate. It doesn't mean that a person needs to take advantage of that equal time, but they have to be afforded that equal time. So, I mean, in YouTube's case, I mean, I guess they're saying the Democratic Party is welcome to take equal time on another day. I mean, is that
or elsewhere and other platforms up the profit? Just Google sell a lot of stuff, so they could buy something else, I'm sure. But I mean, this is we're seeing issues on Twitter and other platforms, Facebook with their fake ads, and they're saying, hey, we'll just point you to the real stuff. So that way we're being independent and we're showing you what the truth is elsewhere. So they're all playing in this game of taking the money and banking it. All of the social platforms, all the digital platforms. And so if we have a problem now, we should have a problem everywhere with everything that's going on. And Jack is not saying no to what's going on Twitter because it's still happening. Mark is not saying to no what's going on Facebook. And is it Sergey, whoever's running Alphabet these days, or if they've stepped out, they're not saying no to what's going in their pockets. So there's probably 4 people in the world who could make that change, and currently they're taking the money.
Matt,
does that sound really fatalistic? Sorry, I don't want to leave it on a downer, but that's the truth. I mean, look how much market share they control. And so if we say treat it like TV, then that's up to the legislators to pass the legislation that says the same criteria applies for digital as it does for TV. And, the standards, ads get vetted and pulled. It's just, that's not happening in the digital space. And what may come out of this as we move forward is that the consumer, the everyday people, are going to now start to really push back on these digital players to raise the bar versus letting what goes on go on and not taking action, because as I say, the issues across the other platforms are still there. And as I say, Jack and Mark aren't fixing their platforms with the issues with the advertising on their platforms.
What's becoming quickly evident as we have this conversation that none of us really know anything about election law. So maybe we should move on and talk a little bit about the fact that what this says about YouTube in particular. Matt, what do you think? I mean, it's just like, does this pose as a kind of a affirmation of the importance of YouTube in any advertising buy? The fact that this ad buy, if you will, is considered such a coup?
Right. Yeah, because I think it asserts, because even though it's a limited buy on YouTube, it is the homepage, and it does assert, the importance and the prominence of video, which we have been saying every year, and is finally becoming true. I mean, just it's all the video platforms, are exploding. So it's affirming in that way, and people will probably be doing more video advertising and more video content for these campaigns.
Yeah, do you agree there, Sam? I mean, it's just like, does this raise the stature of YouTube in any way, or is it just like an affirmation that if you're not doing stuff on YouTube, if you're not actively engaging the platform and maybe even making it a primary platform, you're missing out on a huge opportunity? Because it's like everybody's wringing themselves in knots that now Trump has this whole ad unit completely locked up for the entire election day.
Well, we'll see if it works or not. But I as part of the mix, it's always been there. I think this is a story that is known perhaps in the marketing and advertising industry and those folks. I don't think the everyday person has this front of mind, and then I don't see them being concerned about it as they are right now. So in terms of business strategy and opportunity for YouTube, yeah, this makes sense. If I'm a marketer, this is not new. So there's nothing new about this. There's obviously the political angle, but in terms of doing what's right for your brand, if you've got the dollars, getting that impact at the right timing of a launch, I'm sure a lot of companies will continue to do that, and I'm sure the biggest brands in the world will continue to use YouTube as part of the mix and part of the play. I'm just interested to see what other platforms and channels do in as a response to try and package something up and sell it as an alternative and try and monetize that. We've seen, just like traditional things like the Super Bowl, and those ad rates continue to grow. So when you have limited eyeballs and you have a major event, there's still opportunity to sell. And so I guess YouTube are doing a great thing.
Well, with that, it's time for the fair, fail, foul. But before we get to that segment of the show, I do want to take this quick opportunity to thank my guests again and allow them to each do a shameless plug, starting with Sam Monnie. You can find him at marketingtransformed.com. That's the home of his consultancy and also his podcast, Across the Pond. Tell us what's going on in your world, Sam. What would you like to promote?
Well, Bob, as I keep saying, you are the most gracious person to allow someone on to your show and then plug their own podcast. But yes,
I've been doing that since the beginning. You know that.
Well, I know, but this could be the biggest competitor you have out there in my own head. But we talk about things that transform your business and marketing strategy, whether you're a rising star, you're an entrepreneur or professional. So it's really giving you facts, practical application, and of tools and resources to help build your marketing and build your advertising. And actually, we talk about a bunch of things. So we covered storytelling, and we had topics, thought leaders like Muhammad Ali and Maya Angelou, and I almost got me singing Mercy Me by Marvin Gaye on a recent episode. We talking about the B2I, the growth of that is personalization and new marketing standards. So I think there's some great content that you can get there. And yes, if you like what you hear on this show or that show, Across the Pond, Marketing Transformed, hire me. I'm out there. You can find my digits on LinkedIn and on the marketingtransformed.com website.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and every bit of the energy that you hear of Sam here on the show, it's there in real life. He's a force of nature. You definitely want to meet him. Well, next up we have Mat Zucker. You can find him at there's a whole bunch of places you can find you, but profit.com is where you are a partner.
Yep.
Tell us other places where we can find you. Where can we find your podcast? Where can we find anything else?
Second you finish with the BeanCast and right after you listen to Across the Pond, come to rising-podcast.com. Rising is a marketing podcast, not about marketing, but about marketing careers. We actually, my buddy Josh and I from Direct Agents, Josh Boaz, we interview marketing fast movers like the number twos in marketing who are rising up and about their careers and their trajectories and how they got to where they are. We've got this really special segment that I love called Thank You Notes, where each guest thanks someone from their past that opened up a door.
That's really nice.
Gave them some advice. It's really beautiful. If you work for Hallmark and you'd like to sponsor this segment, but anyway, we're brand new. We started in November, and we've gotten some really great following so far and some really amazing guests. There's about 10 episodes out already, one coming out every other week.
Yeah, I love this idea. When you pitched this and told me what you were doing, I was really impressed. So this is a show that you should definitely listen to out there. As for me, for more information about me or the show, visit thebeancast.com. There you can find a complete show archive. You can find out how to consult with me. And of course, you can even find out how to advertise on the program. So check it all out at thebeancast.com. And now it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul, a rundown of the best and worst of advertising, marketing, and public relations from the last week. First, for me, the fair. Of all the brands that could have figured out TikTok, I found it hilarious that Mucinex actually executed really well with their particular campaign that they put on there. Now, I'm not saying it's great creative. I hate that little mucus guy that they have, that mucus character. I'm not a big fan of him, but they keyed into one of the viral content trends of the network. This whole thing where people do these dance moves and then they challenge each other to do the dance moves. And then you have side-by-side comparisons of the dance moves. And they put one of those contests in play, and they're delivering a surprisingly relevant dance contest campaign that seems to be working. Matt, what's your thoughts on this? I mean, it's
the dance contests are huge on TikTok. I know this because I'm buddies with the folks at Movers and Shakers who produce a lot of these TikTok, campaigns. They did it for a makeup campaign called ELF, and it was a big hit. So I think just the power of dance is really big out there. And I think you're going to see more brands, even quirky brands and brands you wouldn't expect, coming on TikTok, not just to do dance, but to do to show up there in an interesting, quirky way. I mean, I don't know if we'll see Vicks Vapo Rub. That might be kind of gross, but I can see more of this happening.
Yeah, I can see the whole Vicks Vapo Rub going completely off the deep end when they start rubbing this stuff on them in like synchronized fashion. I mean, this is not really going to work very well. Probably get them in a lot of trouble. All right, let's move on to the fail of the week. The Bloomberg campaign, lauded last week, or at least reviled by some last week for all their influencer efforts, managed to get Twitter to ban about 70 user accounts permanently or temporarily for platform manipulation and spam for violating their platform manipulation and spam policy. Sam, this was bound to happen. We knew this was bound to happen, but it's kind of crappy that as a result of this effort, some people lost their accounts completely. Who's to blame here? Is it the Bloomberg campaign for not knowing that they were violating the policy? Or is it the users' fault ultimately, and they're responsible for what they do on their own account?
As I looked into this, all I saw was that folks were receiving $2,500 a month to promote the mayor's candidacy, and so if someone approaches you with that amount of money to do something copy and paste, then you're probably not expecting to be kicked off Twitter, but then that's what happened. So again, it seems like the rules were there to be kind of snuck around, and they managed to sneak for a while, and then I think there was probably political pressure as much as anything to take it down. So it's the whole influencer situation it's a fraught world now. There's going to be so much more regulation coming on board. So I don't think this issue is going to impinge the influencers. They're now having to sort of specify in photos that it's a paid ad, and probably a lot of them aren't doing that. So I think the whole world of influencers, they're going to have to take stock, because this is going to go beyond this Bloomberg issue. It's going to be a more general challenge, because the FTC are definitely taking much more stock on this. And I don't even know if this was an FTC thing, but if you're an influencer now, do your homework and get your stuff in order, because I think there's going to be a lot more cases as we go forward, and this political one is just going to be, I think, the tip of the iceberg.
And now for the foul. You didn't think you'd get through this show without me bringing this one up. Now, we're gonna have a roundtable. All three of us are gonna talk about this.
What is this topic that you're bringing up, Bob? I cannot think what it could be.
I don't know. Some people are calling it the best thing ever in advertising. Some people are calling it the grossest, stupidest thing that a brand ever did. But apparently, Burger King thought it was a good idea to showcase the fact that they had no preservatives in their product by allowing a Whopper to rot for over 30 days. Fill it with mold and rotting vegetables and moldy bread, and they shot those rotting burgers and they put them in TV commercials. They put them in print ads. Okay, Matt, you're the creative guy. Is this a great idea or is this terrible idea? What's your take on this?
This is a great idea.
Okay.
Oh, look at that.
They made their point. What we learn as a copywriter is, figure out your point and then make it to the most extreme you can, and then maybe pull back a little if you have to, or just keep it there. And that's where the best work is. I mean, what Burger King is really great at is brand momentum. Some you'll like and some you won't, but they know how to keep doing it and make really, really simple points really creatively and earn far more than their power. And they're bringing all sorts of new people in. So even if you think this one's gross, the next one you might like, you might not like. But I loved this. I thought this was really gross and terrific, and they can handle it. They can do this.
Okay, Sam, what do you think?
Let me clear my throat. Okay. So, three things to say, Bob. Firstly, if you're one of the QSR brands, if you're the other competitors, you know who they are. They are getting, I feel for their marketers, because they're getting such a hard time right now, because Burger King have sucked all the air out of the room, and now everyone's talking about them. So everyone else is having a hard time. So I feel for all the marketers and agencies working on the Wendy's and the McDonald's and all the other people, because they're not having fun right now. So that's the first point. Second point is, I do appreciate, and I have to say, the firm Machado, the CMO, he's out there dropping receipts on social. So when everyone comes after him, the last thing I saw he posted is that, hey, we've had 2.5 billion impressions and 96% neutral and positive sentiment. By the way, the average CMO is out there 46 months and declining. I've been in this job 72 months. I must be doing something right, because I'm delivering. And I'm paraphrasing his tweets, and I'm saying, okay, if you've got receipts, then you go, because he is delivering. So that's the second point I'd say about so the data points are indicating something is happening. If it's not negative, it's neutral to positive. So we'll see over time. And then the third point I'd say, for me, actually, the biggest thing in the industry, and I posted something on LinkedIn, it's getting a lot of traction. The bigger news is a CMO persuading 3 agencies to collaborate and share the credit for an idea. And that, for me, as a marketer, is like, how the hell did he manage to do that? Because the backstory is, I think 3 different agencies basically pitched and presented the same idea. He said, okay, you all talk to each other, figure it out. We're going to go together and we're going to share the love and share the credit. So for me, from the industry side, that's actually such a great news story of how to do marketing. And now, from a leadership perspective in the industry, he can sit in front of the other C-suiters and say, look, I'm leading resources, I'm driving collaboration, and I'm delivering impact and results for the brand. This is the strategic role as a CMO. So I see a lot of positives coming out of this, and I haven't answered the question whether I like the ad or not, and I'm not going to.
No. For me, there's a reason I put it in foul. It's not because I think that the ad is stupid or bad or in any way. It's just, it's foul. It's a disgusting ad. And for me, the point is well taken. The point is made. I now understand that there's no preservatives in that burger, in that sandwich, in any way, shape, or form. I mean, the point is made, but I'm still looking at a gross Whopper, and that doesn't make me want to eat it. And I think that for me, that's the be all end all. We have to wait and see to how do sales go up as a result of this. That's the only way to measure the effectiveness of this ad. Because while the point is made, and I now know that this is a cleaner choice for me to get, I'm not going to take them up on it because I don't want to have that in my body. You know, it's just like when I see, I'm thinking of that moldy sandwich when I want to eat this sandwich, and that's not a good thing. So, you know,
not for you, Bob.
We'll continue. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm perfectly willing to, you know, be in love with this ad if it turns out to be effective.
But Bob, before we close out this topic, I think there's a bigger scandal right now for Burger King, and it's happening in the UK because I think in New Zealand they launched this thing, a burger with just fries inside, and in the UK that's known as a chip butty, a chip sandwich basically, and the UK is outraged that this American company is trying to claim they've invented this thing called the chip butty. They've just discovered it. So that, for me as a Brit, is the biggest issue. Whether Burger King are trying to take credit for the chip butty, because let me tell you, that is not possible. I've had them all my life. That is a British thing. That is certainly not a Burger King thing. So that is a true scandal.
I'm going to veto you on that. I think this moldy Whopper is a lot more important. But one last thing I do want to say, though, in defense of what Matt said, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's just like, I think that's probably the most salient argument I've heard in favor of this ad, is that when we are in creative, we're tasked to push the boundaries, to communicate in the rawest, most powerful way possible what the core benefit or unique selling point is. And that's what they were tasked to do, and they did it. And they did it really extremely well. And I think that it's going to open up the floodgates of similar opportunity for a lot of creative agencies out there. It's just whether it's effective. That, for me, that's the only...
Well, the good news, like most advertising, you'll forget about it next week, so don't worry about the gross factor.
Oh, this is going to show up at the award shows, my friend. We are not going to forget about this for a very, very long time. Well, have a suggestion for this list or just want to discuss it? Comment online. Use the hashtag FairFailFoul. That's #FairFailFoul. And that does it for this week's edition of the BeanCast. If you'd like to subscribe to our podcast, visit our website at thebeancast.com and click on the subscribe link. If you're an Apple Podcast listener, we've also provided a direct link to our listing there, or just search for the BeanCast in the podcast directory on the Apple Podcast app. And whichever podcast directory you use, when you subscribe, please leave us a review. Got a comment? Have a question? We'd love to hear from you. Just send your emails to beancast@gmail.com. Opening theme was performed by Joe Seibel. Closing theme by C. Jax. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Norp. We'll be back again next week. Hope you'll join us then.
You know what I mean? It's like if it's, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. Just like, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like totally like that. It's like, I don't know, like if it's, you know, it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just like kind of, it just seems like it's just like almost exactly.
I thought of a title, if you want, Follow the Money.
Follow the money. That's good.
I see where you got that from. I see what you're doing there.
Genius.
You could, I think you're spelling it Monnie, Bob. You see, look at that. You see.
Ooh, please. I meant that.
Yeah.
Now I did. That's brilliant.
Okay. No, but you're the copywriter. Yeah, take credit. Please. That was your idea. Yeah.
I'm not that punny.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Exactly.
Cool beans.